This is a historical fiction story inspired by the painting called The Surrender of Lord Cornwallis that hangs in the Capitol Rotunda, followed by an analysis of the painting. Smoke hung over the fields of Yorktown like a shroud. The morning sun fought to pierce through the haze, but the world remained cloaked in the residue of battle. General George Washington sat astride his white horse, his posture upright and commanding, his expression calm but unyielding. His eyes scanned the ranks of British soldiers marching toward the designated field of surrender. Their red coats, once symbols of imperial power, now looked like faded relics, sullied by the mud and blood of war. Major General Benjamin Lincoln, standing at Washington's right, adjusted his hat and glanced sideways at his commander. He knew the symbolic weight of this moment. The war, long and bitter, had exacted a heavy toll. But today, the tide of history was turning. The sound of drums broke the silence. A steady, somber cadence echoed across the battlefield as the British column approached. General Charles O'Hara rode at the head of the procession, his uniform immaculate despite the defeat. He bore the sword of surrender, a ceremonial gesture loaded with humiliation. O'Hara, not Lord Cornwallis, had been sent to deliver it. Cornwallis, claiming illness, had avoided the indignity, leaving his subordinate to face the victors. As O'Hara reached the American line, his eyes briefly met Washington's. The American general's gaze was steady, revealing neither triumph nor pity. O'Hara hesitated for a moment, then turned toward Benjamin Lincoln, offering the sword. It was an intentional gesture of protocol. Washington had decreed that his second-in-command would accept the surrender, mirroring Cornwallis's slight. Lincoln stepped forward and took the sword with a solemn nod, his face betraying no emotion. Behind them, ranks of American and French soldiers watched the proceedings. The Americans, weary but victorious, stood tall in their patched uniforms, many of them barefoot despite the chill in the air. They had fought for years, endured hardships most could barely fathom, and now they were witnessing the fruits of their labor. Beside them stood the French allies, their uniforms pristine, their discipline unwavering. Generals Lafayette and Rochambeau exchanged quiet glances, acknowledging the culmination of their efforts to bring their two nations together for this cause. The British soldiers began stacking their muskets and laying down their colors. The clatter of weapons against the ground echoed like the toll of a bell. For the Americans, it was a sound of liberation. For the British, it was one of defeat. Men on both sides stood silently, their expressions reflecting the weight of the moment. Some British soldiers avoided eye contact, their faces flushed with shame. Others looked ahead stoically, resigned to their fate. Washington's thoughts turned inward. He thought of the sacrifices made to reach this moment, the men who had frozen at Valley Forge, the blood spilled at Saratoga, the betrayals, the endless marches, the uncertainty. The revolution had been as much a test of endurance as it was a series of battles. And yet, here they stood, victorious, not just against the might of the British Empire, but against the doubts that had plagued them from the beginning. The scene unfolded slowly, each step deliberate. As the last of the British soldiers surrendered their arms, O'Hara turned to Washington once more. "It is done, sir," O'Hara said, his voice steady but hollow. Washington nodded. "Indeed it is," he replied, his voice carrying the weight of a leader who understood the gravity of this victory. "Let us hope it will lead to a just and lasting peace." As the British troops began their retreat, the assembled American and French soldiers broke into quiet cheers. The officers remained composed, but a sense of relief and pride filled the air. Lafayette approached Washington and offered a slight bow. "Mon Général," Lafayette said, his French accent unmistakable, "today liberty has taken a great stride forward." Washington extended a hand, clasping Lafayette's shoulder. "Your dedication and your country's aid have been invaluable, my friend. This victory belongs to us all." The day wore on, and the formalities concluded. As Washington and his officers rode back toward their encampment, he allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The war was not officially over. Negotiations would take time. But the battle at Yorktown had broken the British will to continue. For the first time in years, Washington felt a glimmer of hope, not just for victory, but for the birth of a nation. Analysis of the painting. This painting, titled The Surrender of Lord Cornwallis, was completed by John Trumbull, a celebrated artist of the American Revolutionary period. Commissioned to commemorate pivotal moments in the American struggle for independence, it captures the formal surrender of British forces to the combined American and French armies at Yorktown, Virginia, on October 19, 1781. The event marked the effective end of the Revolutionary War and paved the way for American independence. In the center of the painting, General George Washington sits astride a white horse, towering over the scene as a symbol of leadership and resilience. Historically, Washington did not personally accept the surrender. That role fell to Major General Benjamin Lincoln, who stands to Washington's right in the painting. Reflecting the historical decision to mirror Cornwallis's refusal to appear, General Charles O'Hara, representing the British, stands before Lincoln, sword extended in surrender. On the left side of the painting, the defeated British troops stand with somber faces, their flags furled as a sign of capitulation. In contrast, the right side is dominated by the victorious Allied forces, including American troops in worn but proud uniforms and French officers in polished attire. The presence of Marquis de Lafayette and Comte de Rochambeau highlights the critical role of French support in securing this victory. Trumbull's attention to detail is remarkable. The positioning of the figures emphasizes the unity between American and French forces while framing the British surrender as both a military and symbolic defeat. The dark, smoky clouds in the background evoke the violence and chaos of war, while the clear sky above suggests hope and renewal. Trumbull idealizes the moment, presenting it as a carefully choreographed tableau of dignity and order. In reality, the scene was far less grand. Washington observed from a distance, and the surrender ceremony was tinged with British resentment. Nevertheless, the painting immortalizes the event as a turning point in American history, underscoring the themes of perseverance, alliance, and liberty. This artwork remains one of the most iconic depictions of the Revolutionary War, celebrated not just for its artistic quality, but for its historical significance. It hangs in the United States Capitol Rotunda, a testament to the enduring legacy of the struggle for independence.